there are on the bottom, you can see where it says reactions. So if you are just really excited about becoming your best friend in 2024, hit the heart emoji. So that's under reactions. You can see all the different ones. There's everything from clapping, a thumbs up, laughing, a smile. Yeah, absolutely. Celebration there. Amanda Mason looking forward to becoming a best friend of herself in 2024. I know we all can use a little bit being a little kinder to ourselves. So yeah, if you're really excited about that, great. If you're just trying to kill time, you got a meeting after this, and you're just kind of killing times at work, and you use the thumbs up emoji, and we'll get going here in a second. Here we go. Let me get my PowerPoint up, and Don using that heart emoji. Thank you so much. All right. All right, I love to use this little feature here. I'm a big fan of getting myself fully into the picture. I will get smaller here as we kick off. And the reason we're all here today is to learn about how to become our own best friend in 2024. So first and foremost, thank you very much for showing up, suiting up and showing up. Like I said, I wanted to know where everybody's logging in from. We're getting to use the little emojis here because we'll be using them shortly as we move through the presentation, and I'll be asking some questions. There is a prize today, by the way, so there are going to be some questions along the way. And what I'm doing here is for the person who wins the most of these, in other words, I'm going to have 3 questions. If you're in the top 3 for in any of one of the questions, then you'll be eligible. Whoever gets the most questions right, I will be sending over a gift certificate of your choice, either Whataburger or Starbucks. So anyway, just to keep your attention focused here today on the presentation, I thought I would do that kind of thing. So here, the idea here is that we're talking about becoming our own best friend. And I want to start with a poll of like why it is that this is so important. We're talking about self-sabotage and becoming your own best friend. Now, you may think, well, how are these two things connected? How is self-sabotage and being your own best friend connected? Well, obviously, when we are self-sabotaging, right, we are unintentionally harming our own goals, happiness, and success. And it involves behaviors that work against us of what we consciously want for ourselves. Unfortunately, self-sabotage often happens unconsciously through habits we're not aware of. Now, when I put this poll up on LinkedIn, the number 1 and number 2 were procrastination and negative self-talk. So if you've got procrastination or negative self-talk, then use that emoji. Give me a thumbs up. I'm just curious if this is something that's relevant to you. If this is something that you experience, either procrastination, negative self-talk, really it could be avoiding opportunities or perfectionism, please use those reaction emojis down on the bottom. All right, I see a couple of folks. All right, Beth found that reaction emoji. I'd be really surprised if anybody in this crowd is completely devoid of negative self-talk. I found, when I talk to people that they do have a little bit of negative self-talk. They may say things that are not so nice to themselves, and throughout the day here, or throughout the hour, maybe 45, 50 minutes, we're getting a couple more people rolling in here. Welcome to Terry. Welcome to Leo. Thank you for joining here today. Wherever you're from, please drop that in the chat. Would love to know where it is that you're dialing in from. And I say dialing in, I'm so old school. I remember the days of the 2400 baud modem. I just think I just aged myself here, dated myself here for everybody in the audience. The reason why I'm showing this slide here is this slide here points to the fact that the way that we're not so nice to ourselves, the way that we're not our own best friend, is through these self-sabotaging methods. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today. And if all you get from today is to learn, one, how it is that you self-sabotage by taking the saboteur assessment, this free assessment that I have linked on the event announcement. At the end, you will get there's an opportunity to get some resources. So if you don't want to take a ton of notes, you'll get a bunch of resources, and that saboteur assessment is there. If all you get from today is one, to learn about how you self-sabotage and to learn about your saboteur persona, if you get that, that's big, because now what you can start to do is you can start catching yourself self-sabotaging. And then you're also going to learn about how to activate the part of the brain where the saboteur does not live. So I think if you get those two things, you're going to get a lot of value out of today. I'm really excited to talk through this. So hey, like I said, is this being your own best friend and biggest supporter? I think the timeliness of this is there. You know, here we are, end of 2023. We're looking back on the year. We're setting intentions for 2024. This is where we can really become a better version of ourselves, as cliche as that might sound. And I feel like the better version of ourselves is the kinder version to ourselves, being our own best friend. And so what I intend today, my intention is to serve you in several different ways. I'm going to help you understand self-sabotage. I'm going to help you see your hidden saboteurs, both through looking at the 9 saboteur characters and you taking the saboteur assessment, which if you haven't done so, you will have an opportunity to. You'll also learn about techniques to disarm those saboteurs, and finally learn about a little 6-week program that I have. But like I said, my intention here is 100% to serve. It's not to sell. If this is something that you're interested in, great. If not, that's cool in the gang. I really simply want to reduce the amount of mental suffering here on the planet. I know I've been through a lot of it myself, and I know that these techniques do work. Just a little bit about me. So I'm a former engineering manager. I went to school at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute up in Troy, New York. I went to school also at North Carolina State University. I'm a recovering engineer. I jokingly say that. I'm also a recovering alcoholic. I'm an ICF professional certified coach. I'm a DISC facilitator. I do 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. I'm a TEDx speaker, 6 Sigma guy. All of these things are what brought me here to today. I changed my career starting in 2018, and now I get to do what I truly love, which is helping people. I love reducing the amount of stress and frustration for engineering executives so they can feel a sense of joy and flow while creating engaged and innovative teams. So a little bit more about me, but at a kind of a deeper level. Hey, this is me when I was, I was a self-sabotage authority. I just didn't know, right? So I say since 1986. So that's the date of this picture being taken. You know, when I was much younger, I was incredibly socially isolated. I had no dates. I didn't make it to homecoming or prom. I was a people pleaser. I tutored other kids in physics, trig, calculus. I'll admit, mostly the young ladies in my class, and that was my way to have some kind of social connection. Hint number 1, pleaser, saboteur. So that was, I recognized very quickly that I was using my pleaser saboteur. And what makes it a saboteur versus just say, hey, I'm a kind of person who likes to be of service, was that I associated it with negative emotions. And that's one of the things about all 9 of these saboteur personas, is that it causes us some kind of negative emotion. So this was just, let's say my original saboteur story. So here's the question number 1 that I want you to answer. And this, you put this in the chat, as I explained to everybody. And those of you who rolled in a little bit late, you might have missed this. So whatever your answer is, type the letter in the chat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look in the chat and see who had the most right answers, and you're going to get a gift certificate. So according to research, what percentage of our 50,000 thoughts a day are negative? I see immediately. I see C, C, B, C. All right. So Terry, let's see, Leo got it right first, and then Terry, and then Stephen Harris, and then Dawn. Yeah, surprisingly, 80%, right? 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. And there's a good reason for that. There's a good reason for that. It's because of what this thing was designed for. All right. So this squish between our ears, it was designed for one thing and one thing only. And probably, you probably know the answer. That's why I didn't make it as a quiz question. It's designed for one thing, and it's not happiness. It's not for creativity. It's not for loving others. It's not for loving ourselves. It's designed for survival, plain as day. So from an evolutionary psychology perspective, if I went and I got to Leo's great 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 grandfather, somewhere, I don't know where he may have been, but if he had a brother, right, this grandfather, great 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 great, had a brother, and that brother was always so optimistic, and when he heard like noise in the brush behind him, maybe instead of thinking it was an animal, he's like, oh, it's nothing. Well, that brother might have been extinguished and taken out of the evolutionary the gene pool, if you will. So over time, right, this thing that is between our ears was designed 100% for survival. And so that makes sense. So we've got a very old operating system in the brain for a very old operating environment, right? We don't have lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, these days, right? We've got a boss, maybe we've got a spouse, we've got children, we've got all these people in our world that may be activating stress response, but the stress response is not a survival strategy. Like we're not going to perish based upon whatever it is that happens, even though we may think, oh, our boss is going to fire us. So the amygdala, the parts of the brain that are related to stress response, they're super strong. They're really great at causing us to go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And that's where the saboteurs live, right? And so this also comes down to left brain versus right brain dominance. Left brain dominance, this is where all those saboteurs, those negative thought patterns that hinder personal growth, that's where they live. The left brain tends to be very analytical, very judgmental, very self-critical, which fosters the emergence of these saboteurs. The right brain, on the other hand, that's where intuition and creativity lie, right? Whenever we met that person who was really good at painting or something like that, we would always say, oh, they're so right-brained. Well, that's because that's where those types of strengths lie. Intuition, creativity, the wiser, more positive aspects of our psyche live on the right-hand side of the brain. And so what we're doing here in this whole program of positive intelligence, and I'm going to tell you about the tools to develop that side of the brain, is that we're seeking to activate that side of the brain and literally work it out like another muscle that we might have. So here's the cool thing, though. This is the cool thing that I want to tell you, is that we can't do two verbs at the same time. So we can't be self-sabotaging and empathizing. We can't be self-sabotaging through negative self-talk and innovating. We can't be a fascinated anthropologist exploring and be a perfectionist at the same time. So the brain can only do one verb at a time. And I think that's really important. That's very helpful for all of us to know. So what is mental fitness? So mental fitness is simply your capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rather than negative mindset. So we know that it's easy to respond to life's challenges with a negative mindset. It's super simple. And that's because in the brain, if you were to look at the neural connections, it's like a 5-lane highway up there. For those of you who are Central Texans, it's like, what is it, the 130, right? Or these roads that are built for us to go 85 miles per hour. So think about that for a minute. In the brain, our negative thought patterns are low friction, super smooth road, whereas our positive parts of our brain are akin to that country road, really bumpy, maybe hasn't been scraped in a little while, really hard to drive over. And that's okay, because once we recognize that, we can make a change. So this is first and foremost, this whole program, what it's doing here is it's helping us have peak performance. It's improving our peace of mind and wellness, and it does result in healthy relationships. So going a little bit back to, what is this whole program, right? So this is the confluence of neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, not cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, right? Robert Seligman, one of the pioneers in that space, and then performance science. So all four of these came together to create Positive Intelligence, which was a book and a program created by Shirzad Chamine. I really connect a lot with Shirzad Chamine. He started out as an electrical engineer, got an MBA, got a PhD in psychology, similar path to myself, except for the PhD in psychology and the MBA. But I do have a master's in material science. But anyhow, I digress. I really love this program because it's science-based. I've got the receipts, as the young kids say, right? I've got the receipts of how this thing works. I've got the science. I've got the white papers. I've got the journal articles. I know it works. And it's also worked with 19 groups that I've worked with so far. What are the different results from 2,000 participants? And these are not the participants in my groups necessarily, but this is a larger statistic of 2,000 participants. Yeah, what does it do? Boost performance, improves well-being, strengthens relationship. So really, really great outcomes associated with this. I feel that it's a wonderful foundation for one-on-one coaching and group coaching, and it's something that I continue to bring to my clients. Okay, a little bit more about self-sabotage story. The only story that I can tell as well as I can is the one about me, right? I grew up overweight. I was 311 pounds. I was original gangster fat, right? So you see all these kids out there nowadays that are fat because of all the corn syrup and all that kind of stuff, high fructose corn syrup and too many video games and all that. Well, I was in the generation before that, right? I'm 50 years old. There were no other fat kids. So being a fat kid in school was a weird thing. And I grew up overweight. And I used to think that once I lost all my weight, that I would have a great life, that everything would be fantastic. I would have self-esteem. I would attract success and whatever that meant at the time, including beautiful women. I'd be confident. I'd do all these amazing things that I wanted to do in school. My pleaser, restless, and victim, though, had all ganged up on me at that point, right? So there I was sitting there in front of a computer, which is what I did for most of my, from age 11 to 18. So here's the cool, well, I'd say the wild thing is that even after I lost, what is it mathematically, I went from 311 to 183 pounds, right? So I almost lost half of myself. I still found myself in a ton of negative self-talk, people-pleasing, and victim thinking. And I thought to myself, well, why is this, right? This went on through my 20s, 30s, and into my 40s when I finally had to change my life, because the way that I coped with all these negative emotions was by drinking. My alcoholism got so bad that I was visiting the back of state-sponsored taxi cabs, also known as cop cars, and hanging out with folks that had nothing in common with me, right? I was in an odd crowd hanging out in Williamson County Jail. I did get sobriety, thanks to God, and it gave me some personal power. I became awake to all of my feelings. Oh gosh, I was trying to let somebody in there and I got myself off track here. All right. I became finally awake to all my feelings and finally realized, who I was being and what I was doing didn't serve me or the world. So I began my journey. I hired a coach, and after 1 year as a coach, I stumbled onto this amazing program, Positive Intelligence, that I'm telling you about today. I began using this operating system, and you could think of it as the what to do when the proverbial poop hits the fan, right? So the poop hits the fan all the time. This program helps you figure out what it is to do when that happens. So you can think of it this way, right? Like when you see some kind of activating thing in the world, right? So there's an activating event in the world. It causes a stress response. It's stimulus. And you may judge it as bad. You may judge it as bad. You may judge yourself as bad. You may judge the circumstances as bad. And that is what it is that we're really looking to reduce the amount of time that we stay in that judgment, that we stay in that feeling, those negative feelings. So where are these, where are these judges, or the judge and the saboteurs? Like, where do they come from? What is this idea? And those of you who've already taken the saboteur assessment, that's great. I appreciate it. This will be a little bit of review, and you may be wondering, okay, well, How are these things created? Well, it really comes down to this 3x3 grid, and it comes down to what motivates you and what's your style. So for those of you who your motivation is more about independence, acceptance, and security, but you tend to assert as your style, then maybe you'll have controller, hyperachiever, and restless. Me personally, like I mentioned, I have that pleaser. So that means that I am more about acceptance, and I like to earn by giving, right? So I have a pleaser, a restless, and a victim. It's like a, kind of like bingo here. Almost got three in a row if I had a hyperachiever. But it really comes down to what motivates you and what's your personal style, and that'll dictate which of these saboteurs that you have. Okay, and so this is you could see up at the top, the grid here. Oh, this is what I wanted to say about this. This is the cool thing, and again, this is what I told you at the beginning of this presentation: is if all you learn about is how your saboteurs show up for you by taking the saboteur assessment, then you'll be so much further ahead. And there's this wonderful quote from Eckhart Tolle. So it comes from The Power of Now. So really wonderful book. He says, the egoic mind, and you could replace the two words, the phrase egoic mind. You could say the judge and saboteurs, because your judge and your saboteurs are part of your egoic mind. The egoic mind is like a snowman that melts under our conscious awareness. So as soon as we can shine a light on this, it begins to melt. No, what do I mean by that? It ceases to have control over you because you begin to disidentify with your saboteur and your judge. So if any of this is making sense to you, give me a thumbs up. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to answer them at the end. Yeah. So Leo says isolator, nothing gets in. Yeah. So that might be your avoider. That might be the type of saboteur that touches you in your life. So again, if you have any questions, please ask them. We'll answer them at the end here. Okay. All right. Second quiz question. For those of you who are playing along, we've got some winners from the first one. This is a little bit tougher, and there would have been a different book that you would have read to find this one out. According to research, how much more impact does saying negative things out loud have compared to just thinking them? Is it twice as much impact? Is it the same impact? Is it 5 times the impact? Or is it 10 times the impact? All right. Wow, it's interesting how C came up again, but in fact, it is not the right answer. The right answer is D. And looks like Mike Sackmary sent me that in a direct message, although he said 2D. So I'm going to go on that letter. It is D. Stephen Harris also had the right answer. Yes. So amazing as it is. So if, again, another one of those things, if you take from today, so 1, begin to catch your saboteurs, and 2, just stop saying negative stuff about yourself out loud. You'll already have improved your life. So again, I came here with the intention to serve. I hope some of this is helpful for you. All right, so let's look at James. So fortunately, James isn't here. James took this assessment. I'm kidding. James is a fictional character. James took this assessment, and he found that his number 1 is the controller. He's got number 2, avoider, number 3, hypervigilant, and kind of tied for number 3 is pleaser. Now, just out of using the emojis, or you could say something in the chat, how many of you have actually taken this saboteur assessment that I have dropped into the event? Okay, Leo's shaking his head. Thank you for the video. Capri, I hope I'm not messing up your how to say your name there. You gave me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Dawn, Amanda has taken it. Fantastic. Okay, so those of you who have taken it might be familiar with this already. And I see some people actually put theirs into the chat. That's fantastic. So let's talk about the controller. And the reason I picked controller here is a couple of things. So number one, amongst executives, more than 60% of them have controller in their top three. And we can all imagine why that is, right? Like if you're the kind of person who's very controlling, let's just say you've got a command of other people, then probably you're going to get, promoted, right? So, uh, however, this is what happens though, is that we have to be a little bit concerned about the controller saboteur because, well, you as a person who has the controller saboteur, you have thoughts like you're either in control or out of control. So it's very black and white thinking. And that's very dangerous. Let's face it, most of the world has a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of uncertainty. So if you're either in control or out of control, then that can cause a lot of anxiety. And you may also, as a person who has a controller saboteur, you may have the thought of like, others want me and need me to take control, and I'm kind of doing them a favor. It's a bit of a lie there. And no one tells me what to do. And as a person who has the controller saboteur, you may have feelings like a lot of anxiety when things are not going your way. You may become angry and intimidating when others do not follow. You may become impatient with other people's feelings in different styles. Okay. So that's just painting the picture of the controller saboteur. Now, here's the thing. There are definitely strengths, right? They're a person who's confident, they're action oriented, they're decisive, they challenge themselves and others. They're able to do the right thing, even if unpopular, and they see possibilities and activate themselves and others toward an outcome. However, this is the dark side, right? The person has the controller saboteurs, they get temporary results, but at the cost of other people's feelings. And it generates a great deal of anxiety, as so many things in life are uncontrollable. So if you're the kind of person who has a controller saboteur, these are some of the ways that it may be impacting you. And I picked one, for brevity. I only picked one, but I want you to know that if you take the saboteur assessment, not only will it talk about the thoughts, the feelings, it'll talk about the impact on the self and others. It will also talk about, hey, what's the justification lies? How are you justifying keeping this saboteur in your life? You'll also learn like, hey, where did it come from? Now, these are just best guesses. Obviously, everybody's story is going to be a little bit different. Okay. So now maybe you're wondering like, well, aren't negative emotions like good for you? Like, weren't we taught, you can't be positive all the time. You got to have some negative, with the good comes the bad, that kind of thing. Well, yeah, negative emotions, they're around us. They're inevitable. I mean, it kind of goes back to that saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, or pain times resistance to the pain equals suffering. Great quote from the book 10% Happier by Dan Harris. Have you ever noticed when you are in negative emotions, it's really hard to think creatively? Anybody ever experienced that? I know I have. I've had like the boss come over behind my desk and telling me, criticizing me, and then having me fix something on a slide. And oh my goodness, I couldn't fix anything. I was like, hey, please go away. So when we're in these negative emotions, it's really hard to be creative. But here's the funny thing: as soon as the stress goes away, all of a sudden, great ideas begin to flow. Right? So here's the funny part about this is that if you can get yourself out of a negative emotion within 60 seconds, here's what you can avoid. One, you can avoid a ton of cortisol in your body, right? So when we're in a stress response, cortisol just begins to flow throughout our body. It also, when we're in a stress response, it lowers our GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, right? Which helps us have rational thought. So when we're in stress, this neurochemical GABA, it gets reduced, and so now we're not even thinking rationally. So negative emotions, they man, they take a toll. And if I could add one more thing about myself here, is that I lived in cortisol for 11 years working at Samsung. I used to call it the fear factory. We made PowerPoints and stress. And I ended up having, I got a funny heart scan as a result of having so much cortisol. Not funny, haha, but funny bad. So cortisol, yeah, it makes you gain and retain weight. That's another thing. Yeah, geez. No wonder I was 250 pounds when I worked there. Okay. So yes, I think we all understand negative emotions. They're really not good for you, but they do serve one purpose only. And that is as a signal, really just as a signal. So pain is only good for you if you're in pain for, like I said, 60 seconds, you're going to be paying a price there in terms of the cortisol and the GABA, but just, you can notice it and then take action. And so what is it that we're talking about here today with regard to negative emotions? They're only helpful really as that 1 second alert signal, but staying in that hurts our ability to see clearly and respond with, and this is the cool thing, this is our sage, and I'm going to start, I've talked about saboteur, I'm going to start talking about sage here shortly. Sage is where our empathy, our curiosity, our creativity, and laser-focused action live. Negative emotion is saboteur thinking. And so whenever you are feeling a negative emotion, it's traced back to one of those 9 saboteurs or the judge. And I didn't talk too much about the judge. The judge is very simple. The judge is the first negative emotion that shows up. It's the person, I say person, it's the persona, it's the thought of this is bad, I'm bad, or these circumstances are bad. And as soon as there's a negative emotion around that, you know that you're in judge, you know that you're in saboteur. Okay, so what can you do? Well, you can build up the sage. So the sage muscle. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes how to actually build up the sage part of your brain. And this is all, this isn't hand waving Steve woo woo. I know it's kind of, the hand waving is not really coming out because I don't have a green screen behind me, but this is not hand waving exercises. This is all based upon 1,400 journal articles of what this, I'll just go ahead and say it, spoiler alert, mindfulness meditation does to the brain. Builds up the part of the brain where all this stuff happens. Where positive emotions, peace and calm, clear-headed action, creativity, and seeing the big picture. And now we learn about the sage perspective. Because I've already told you what happens in the brain when you tap into the sage. But now I want to tell you about the sage perspective. And I'm going to tell you about it through a story, because I think this is more illustrative than me simply, telling you that the sage perspective is that you can see every outcome or circumstance as a gift or opportunity. So this is a Taoist story, an old Chinese fable, if you will. It's called Maybe. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a classic ancient story illustrating the importance of equanimity and emotional resilience. It does this beautifully. Once upon a time, there was a wise old farmer who had worked on the land for over 40 years. And one day, one of his horses ran away. And his neighbors all came outside and they said sympathetically to him, "Oh, such bad luck." And the wise old farmer said, "Maybe." The following morning, however, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. The neighbors came outside. You're going to notice these are some nosy ass neighbors. And they said, "Such good luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The following afternoon, his son decided to ride one of the untamed horses and was thrown off, causing him to break his leg. The neighbors came outside once again and said, "Oh, how unfortunate." The farmer once again said, "Maybe." The following morning, though, military officials came to the farmer's village to draft the young men into the army for a new war. Observing that the farmer's son's leg was broken, hey, they weren't able to draft the kid. And the neighbors once again said, such good luck. And once again, the farmer said, maybe. This story illustrates this perspective, the perspective that really we have no idea whether some outcome, some circumstance is good or bad. You know, as Shakespeare said in Hamlet, there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's all about our thoughts. So here's where we're at. Just to summarize a couple of ideas here. Your saboteur is your reaction, that limbic brain, that fight or flight. The sage is where you respond. The feelings and thoughts that you might have, they're fearful thoughts, they're anxious thoughts, they're angry thoughts, guilty or shameful thoughts. That's your saboteur. When you're in sage, you're going to be curious, empathetic, innovative, and focused. Where does this left brain is where the saboteur lives, and the sage is where the right brain. Now, you may wonder to yourself, well, hey, which of these perspectives of the sage or the saboteur is true? The answer is really clear. It's whichever you believe becomes true. It's akin to the Henry Ford quote, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And hopefully you're believing in that because you've seen maybe in your own life when you thought something was bad, maybe you lost a job or a person left you in your life, right? A girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever, or something bad happened. But then a year later, you're like, you know what? That was actually a gift. So now I'm going to teach you, we know where the sage lives in the brain. And now I want to show you very briefly a way to access it. So for those of you who are already doing mindfulness meditation, fantastic. This is a refresher. And I like this one because you get to see it in action. So one of the many PQ, so PQ stands for positive intelligence quotient. And you could think of PQ as a percentage of the time in which you're being your own best friend. Okay, so all of us have a PQ score, and it is a mathematical calculation of the percentage of time in which we are being our own best friend. Now, a rep is just like going to the gym, right? So I go to the gym, I do a rep, and that builds up the part of that mental muscle, the PQ brain, the sage part of our brain. So I'm going to show you a very simple one. If you just take two fingertips and you push them together with such attention that you can feel the ridges of your fingertips. Probably before you've put fingertips together and you've never really thought about, I don't know, maybe you have. I can't say that. Maybe it's likely that sometimes you felt those ridges of your fingertips. But now with focus, if you just focus on that, and for 3 breaths is 10 seconds, and just rub those fingertips. You can even go down to your palm, but again, focusing on the feeling. Okay, this is a very basic but powerful mindfulness meditation technique. Now, why? It's because we are accessing one of our 5 senses. And for those of you who do have a meditation practice, very likely you've done things like focusing on the breath, maybe feeling the cold air enter your nostrils, feeling the warm air exiting your nostrils. It's all the same. Anytime we access some sensory-based mindfulness, it builds up that part of the brain where the sage lives. So if you weren't already motivated to start meditating, maybe today is another day that you're going to be motivated to start meditating. And here's the cool thing from this is the other kind of hidden benefit of this positive intelligence program is it does build up your consistent meditation practice. And just a brief poll that I took on LinkedIn, 32% of people want to either start and improve. So, the yes, and I want to improve it, 32%. 32% say no, they don't have a consistent meditation practice, but they want one. So 64% people either want to improve it or they want to have a consistent meditation practice. And this program, as a natural side effect, it builds up this daily habit. You know what they say about habits, right? They can take, especially habits where there's a lot of effort put into it. It can take, 60, 70 days, not 21 days, like starting a chocolate habit. All right. So here's the simplicity of this operating system. I told you about at the beginning of this. I said, hey, this is an operating system, updating the operating system in this very old hardware of the squish between our ears. The operating system is very simple, right? So if you're feeling negative emotions, you are in saboteur mode. And now having these saboteur personas in mind, having taken the saboteur assessment, now you can begin to catch them. So as soon as you catch them, hey, do some PQ reps. Already you've got the, rubbing your fingers together. There's things you can do with breath. There's all kinds of different ways of accessing this. You can assume the sage perspective and that every problem can be converted into an opportunity gift. And then you can generate the gift by using sage powers like empathy, curiosity, creativity, calm, and clear-headed action. Again, in the interest of time and to not overload you with learning, I'm not going to talk about the 5 sages very much. However, I do have a something you can download at the end of this and learn a little bit more about it. Or if you have some interest in it, you can get on a call with me and I'll be happy to share more about it. Now, some of you may be wondering, hey, is it really possible to shift from this saboteur thinking to sage, even in, when the proverbial poop hits the fan? Yes. But the speed does depend on the mental muscle strength. And that's why this isn't, so many of us, we go to like the Tony Robbins weekend, or we go to Landmark Forum, or we go to, I don't know what it is that you go to, but some weekend seminar, and all of a sudden we're so filled with insights. And then a month later, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. So you need to build a mental muscle. And so that's what this program is about. I can give you all these insights today. However, to get the most out of this, you need to follow the 6-week program. All right. Question number 3, for those of you who are playing, and please don't send it to me directly, send it into the chat. According to research, what % higher productivity ratings did executives receive after improving their optimism metrics over 6 months? Were they 3% higher? Was it 5% higher, 11% higher, or 15% higher? Yeah, most people go, let's see. I'm going to keep my mouth shut and not bias the answers. All right. Keep seeing D's. I keep seeing B's. I keep seeing D's. Did everybody answer? Maybe you all did. Okay. Well, the answer, believe it or not, is 11%. I threw that 15% in there, right? Like, oh, pick the highest number. But yeah, surprisingly, 11% higher. And you think about the amount of benefit, right? If you look at 168 hours in every week, 56 for sleeping, 56 for your day job, and 56 for yourself. If you take that 56 for your day job and you're getting 11% more productivity, that's huge. That is huge. So you take that over an entire year, that's a large amount more productivity that you can then use for hitting the golf range or something like that. So lasting positive change, though, requires not just the insight, but building up the mental muscle. And so I hinted about that a couple of slides ago before I engaged you in the futile experience of trying to guess that answer. I could see everybody wanted to go for 15%. only, when it comes to lasting change, right? Like you can read a book, like I said, you can go to a seminar, you can watch a webinar, you're going to have that insight, right? You're going to have that insight, that aha moment. You're like, wow, I need to start doing that, or I've learned that thing. Now I have this skill. I've now put this tool in my mental toolbox. Well, for you to actually use the tool when you need it, you need to build up the mental muscle. So here we go. Yeah, right here where my finger is, when the non-green screen gets me, that is the app that I'm talking about. So Positive Intelligence is a program. It's based upon the book by Shirzad Shamin. It's an amazing app. I think the app is in its third major revision. Of course, they're always making little tiny updates. Fantastic app. It gamifies this entire program. So anyway, that's just when I keep talking about the program is the methodology, plus there is literally a program in the form of an app. So as you build that mental muscle, that's what makes lasting change. And it requires intense initial practice. So that's 15 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks, right? So you can't defeat that gang of bandits by sending one new fighter every day. And remember what we talked about with your negativity bias in your mind. Yeah, that it's strong. So you need to come at it with something very powerful, and that is doing the practice of the PQ reps, the mindfulness, the becoming aware of your saboteurs, catching your saboteurs, so you catch your saboteur, you weaken your saboteur by catching it quickly and not spending more brain energy on it, then using the PQ rep to strengthen the part of the sage, then coming in, looking the sage perspective and bringing one of the 5 sage superpowers that we didn't talk too much about today, bringing those to the party. So that's how this works. And let me give you a brief summary here. So I'm going to ask you to do one quick thing, and then we'll wrap up. So, hey, our minds are survival machines operating on an outdated operating system. That's pretty clear, right? This thing was made, you could either say 6,000 years ago or millions of years ago, depending on your belief system. Self-sabotage through judge and our saboteurs. So we all self-sabotage through our judge and our saboteurs. We can interrupt that with a sensory-based mindfulness. We can tap into the sage perspective, just like that farmer, by saying, hey, maybe. Now, before I let you go, before we wrap up, I do want to take some time here to get some feedback from you. Also, by you giving me some feedback, I will send you over a free gift that's going to summarize so much of this and also give you some more tools. So if you could use the QR code, or if you are, you're on your computer and you're not able to use a QR code, you could just go to a web browser, type in talk.ac/Stephen English, and then enter this code SAGE. Now, this really helps me out. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing that's working, I want to do more of that. Whatever I'm doing that's not working, I want to do less of that. And in order for me to improve, I need to get your feedback. And in exchange for getting that feedback, I'm going to send you this cool bonus. So yeah, anyway, that is that. I'm going to wait here for just a couple of minutes. If you've already given me the feedback, just type done into the chat. I'm on a mission to get my message in front of as many people as possible, because I truly believe that if people even just applied what all of you, right? So 8 of you, 8 of you have learned, received today. If you apply what you've learned and received today on a consistent basis, your level of mental suffering will go down. I know it will. It just absolutely will, based upon all the people that I've worked with, having done this program. So take a couple of moments. Please give me some feedback. Like I said, I'll send you over a nice gift here based upon you taking the time. I really appreciate that. And I leave you with this. And this is the whole centerpiece of this program, really, is this quote from Carl Jung. So Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's what these saboteurs are. These saboteurs are this unconscious part of your brain that is directing your life. And so until you can see them for what they are and see them and begin to catch them, then let's face it, you will be, let's say, at the mercy of them, for lack of a better term. And so please, no matter what, take the saboteur assessment, start to catch your unconscious saboteurs, and begin to apply whatever it is that you've learned from today. And now, with 5 minutes left, I will pause here and open up to any kind of questions. If anybody has questions, I'm all ears, and I really appreciate your patience and your attention today.